So I think leadership's a really complex kind of question. You can show it in certain ways, but I think if I'm going to nut it down to a few things, I think number one, doing what you say you're going to do. But I truly believe, looking around, Ash, there's not a tradie or builder out there that doesn't want to be a good builder or tradie or leader. I tell you, there is not one out there. It's just that some might not have the skills of leadership and things like that. And it's probably this past 12 months that I've actually taken the time and I put it in my calendar. Honestly, Ash, every Monday I've got a calendar that says, check yourself, boy. I know that sounds really funny, but it just says, check yourself, boy. And people see my calendar and go, what is that? And I'm like, I take half an hour and I sit here and go, okay, what did I do good this week? What did I do bad this week? How can I be better? Why was I like that? All these things. We would build a beautiful product and it would be like, come on, walk into that home and tell me it's not beautiful. But it wasn't about that. It was the experience. Number one, listen. I think have a conversation with the people. Take time and not just listen about, don't just judge them about how they're going on at work. I'm a bit of an emotional guy, Ashley, but see how they're going, in life. Sit down with them and say, hey, get to know them. Have that personal rapport so you can break down a few barriers and then they're going to be a bit more receptible to your feedback as well.
Welcome to Tradies Who Lead, the podcast bringing practical leadership to every tradie. I'm Ashley Beltecki, a diesel mechanic by trade and your host. Every episode you'll hear from tradies across all industries, sharing how they apply leadership in their role, regardless of their title or experience. Real stories, real people, so you can learn from them and level up your leadership on site. In this episode, we cover how leadership starts with leaving our ego aside and how a focus on relationships is the key to better team and business performance. Today's guest is Aaron NG, and he's built something the construction industry has long needed. As is the founder of The Good Builder, Australia's leading media and intelligence platform for the residential construction industry. Think podcast, editorial, video, business directory, and paid research, all built from the ground up, and aimed at giving builders and tradies the straight talk, no BS intelligence they need to run better businesses. As the host of the Good Builder podcast, Az has sat across from builders, developers, industry bodies and suppliers right across Australia and New Zealand, cutting through the noise to surface what really matters on the tools and in the office. He's worked with some of the biggest and smallest builders in the country, and at the core of it is all one mission: restoring trust and raising standards in the residential construction industry. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today, Az.
Oh, no worries, Ash. It's an absolute pleasure. I think, like I said to you in the beginning, you have hit your stride in this cool little space and doing such good work before I even knew what it was. So I think you are amazing and I am absolutely honoured to be here.
That means a lot, and I'm really excited to see where the conversation takes us today. The conversation, or the question I start with, is what does leadership mean to you?
Oh, it's a hard one, Ash. Me and you are on the same journey, right? We're both looking for people in the industry that we talk to. I love your podcast and what you do, and you are always talking to these amazing leaders. I saw you had Hopkins on the other day, and I'm jealous. He's amazing. He's an amazing leader in the industry, even from a social perspective. He's showing from a social perspective what a good trade should look like. So I think leadership's a really complex kind of question, and I don't mean to make it too complex. It's kind of complex and simple. You can show it in certain ways, but I think if I'm going to nut it down to a few things, I think number one, doing what you say you're going to do. And I think guys like Hopkins and things like that, those traders that you always have on, do that. You can see it in their socials on site. They're showing how they do the work and they're trying to educate the industry at the same time. They just don't let people down. I think the other thing that I've learned along the way, and I'm not the best leader at all, Ash, in my past career and things like that, I was a manager, but I would never consider myself a leader, to be honest. But what I learnt from great leaders was having respect for the people that are in your crew, making sure you give people enough leverage and enough leash to do what they need to do. And if they're coming from a different environment or you're an apprentice coming into the business, give them some respect to have a shot at things. And those that are more experienced that come into your business, give them a shot at how they did things in their other business and have that respect that they're bringing that into your business. I think that shows true leadership. And I think that leads to my third thing, and it's kind of from a book that I love. And I'm not one of those guys that go, oh, read this book, Ash. But one of the books that I've read and really impacted my life is a book by Ryan Holiday called Leave Your Ego is the Enemy. And it's all about Stoic philosophy. I know I'm going a bit weird and deep, but with this, Ash, Stoic philosophy is all around just control what you can control and be a good person, really. And it talks about, like, to get through things, sometimes you've got to question yourself and leave that ego at the door. And if there's better people that can do the job, get them to do it. I think that shows true leadership. A true leader knows that they'll do what they say they're going to do and they can do it. They've got the skill to do it. But when they don't know, they have enough of the ability to let go of their ego to get people and give them respect to do the job.
That was fantastic. I love weird and deep, so apologise for that.
I'm probably the weirdest, deepest dude you're going to have on the, I don't know, people like... Anyway, so I hope that was a cool answer, Ash. But that's what I see. I mean, as I said, I don't think I consider myself a great leader by any means, but I'm learning. And I think that's the other thing. You got to continually learn, hey, Ash? That's why I'm doing it with you, like talking to you. I think I'm going to learn a lot this pod too, actually. To you, you're showing exceptional leadership, Ash. This is what what I was saying about Hopkins, you're exactly doing. It's like you are showing leadership in... You probably think you aren't, but you really are in producing all this stuff, putting your time, money, resources into this amazing thing that you're doing and showing the industry what leadership is. That's leadership.
I love that. That means a lot. And I think as well, I love that you talked about the fact that you don't look back and see yourself as a great leader, because I think of the times that I've stepped into leadership, often backfilling roles for a couple weeks at a time, and still being quite young, and a lot of those experiences were prior to really having any support or training or education around leadership. I was the same. I made every mistake under the sun, and it's so easy to look at the parts of someone's leadership that we don't like and not recognise the things they might do really well, and the fact that we're all learning and we all have blind spots and we've all got a journey to go on. So I've never really met a great leader. You definitely read about the great leaders, but also you've never had to work under them to go, oh, I can see that's where their weakness is, because we all have them. So I think being honest about that, though, is the power of we're all figuring it out, but showing up as a good person and caring, and sometimes being able to let go of control, and through our actions, doing our best. That's all we can really ask of ourselves as leaders.
Love it. Yeah.
When it comes to, I guess, you've obviously had that positional leadership as a manager, and you've kind of said that you don't really see yourself as a leader, and I could argue that, well, with the work you're doing now is you're trying to lead the industry. Where did a conversation around leadership for yourself occur? Is it something that's quite new, or you saw yourself as a leader with a position in the past?
Oh, that's a deep question, Ash. I like this. You're good at this. I loved what you said. We're all in this self-discovery, and I think along the way I felt that I was too nice, and I don't know how that came across. People liked to work with me. They genuinely liked to work with me. But what would happen, Ash, along the way is I think I would be too nice, and I'd let the leash out a bit too long, and I'd have people go out surfing from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. and then come back to work going, hey, I just went for a... You're cool with that because you're a pretty easygoing fella. So there were things like that. But then when I had to pull the troops together and we're like, hey, we need to get this project done, or we need to get this job done by tomorrow, they all would. So I don't know, Ash, where my thing comes from. I look at other people, like I look at you and I go, like, I can be better. Like, look at the questions you ask. I think there's always this level of improvement in myself I strive for. And you're very much like me and lots of people in this industry. I don't think a great leader is something that you're just like, you're a great leader. It just doesn't happen. Like, it happens or it doesn't happen. You just keep getting better over time. You can't be the perfect leader like you can't be the perfect person. But you pick up things along the way. And this is what I love about what you do, because I do listen to your podcast all the time and I watch your socials. I mentioned a few guys that you've already had on because I'm a fanboy of yours, and you see what's going on and I'm like, oh, I'm not like them, and maybe it's human self-doubt, but I guess that's my explanation. One of the other things that I've started to understand is you do need to take time to understand yourself, and I think it comes back to knowing your strengths and weaknesses and leaving your ego at the door and what you're good at and what you aren't good at. And I probably never took the time until I started what I'm doing now to go, hey, who are you and what are you good at and what aren't you good at? And I think I've become a better leader since then, because learning from your podcast and the people you've had on, I start to do the things they say, like getting people in to do things I'm not good at, and things seem to go better. So yeah, it's a journey, eh?
I love that you bring that self-awareness conversation to, like, we all understand what it means to lead by example, but in terms of knowing something versus applying it, what it means to actually apply leading by example means having that awareness of how am I showing up and how are other people receiving me? And that requires attention, which can be so hard in this day and age where we're so busy with work or our phones, and especially construction. Like, there's always a million things we could be doing. And the last thing we have is time to sit with ourselves and be like, how did I show up in that situation? Could I have done that better? Where did that come from? Where did that emotion or that reaction, or why is this something that's getting under my skin? And that takes time and pausing.
You're so on it, Ash. We don't talk about that enough in the industry and give us enough time. You're completely right. I think that's a big part of the problem. We are so busy. Like you said, if you're a builder, you've got a billion things to do. There's no shortage of medial tasks for you to do to keep you busy for 20 hours a day if you wanted. It'll never end. And just to take that even 15 minutes just to sit back and go, wait a minute, who are you? And it's probably this past 12 months that I've actually taken the time, and I put it in my calendar. Honestly, Ash, every Monday I've got a calendar that says, check yourself, boy. I know that sounds really funny, but it just says, check yourself, boy. And people see my calendar and go, what is that? And I'm like, I take half an hour and I sit here and go, okay, what did I do good this week? What did I do bad this week? How can I be better? Why was I like that? All these things. And as I've gone, sometimes it feels like a weight's off my shoulders, and I'm like, hey man, you're not so bad. You're doing okay. And yeah, you could do a bit better. That's where it's at. And man, you did act like a bit of a dick. Why did you do that over here? Stop that. Stuff like that, Ash.
That's so awesome. And it shows how sometimes leadership is a practice more than that goal that we're trying to attain. Now, you obviously mentioned that the work you're doing now is a bit of a change, and it's taken you into your own leadership journey a little bit more than what you've done in the past. The Good Builder your mission is to restore trust and raise the standards in the construction industry. Yeah. What does that actually look like, and why is this low trust hurting small to medium businesses as much of construction is?
I think low trust in the end comes from poor leadership, really. Like when we got on this discovery of the Good Builder, it keeps coming back to that leadership thing. And we talk about the good builders. We had a gentleman on the other day, and he's a great developer and worked in the industry for 50 years, and he's a good builder because he's a great leader. And I had this podcast coming up with you, and I'm like, Ash has kind of gone in this way. It's kind of shortcut what we're coming around, but we're getting back to the same solution in the end. So I think leadership is a major critical factor in what makes a good builder and builds trust. Definitely. There's other things, and there's operational things and business stuff that you talk about as well. But in the end, leadership, focus on the things that you got to focus on, bring people in to do the things that you can't do, like accountants and things, communicate with customers. And if you're not the person, get someone else to and do it. But the low trust stuff's really hurting the industry. And while we started the Good Builder, I think the media's been a bit of detrimental to the industry as well. There's always bad news stories. It's quite funny, even from a trade perspective. I saw there was a fight that was up here on the Sunshine Coast, and they said young tradie. And then you have a look at some other media, and there's someone who's had another altercation somewhere, and they went, not young tradie, not nothing. And it's like, what's going on here? And then from the insolvency part with the builders and things that were going on in the industry, that was deteriorating trust. And then along with the fact that I do believe to some degree that while we started the Good Builder too, was the stuff you're preaching, the leadership stuff. We're not taught that in schools. We're not taught how to be leaders. I'm still learning, and I'm in my 40s. If I haven't got it now, you think you've got a problem, but I don't think anyone has. I think that influences sometimes the clients and market's perspective of our industry, because we're not so good at communication. If there is some sort of negotiation or some issue on site, maybe we're not the best at kind of expressing how we feel and why we did things. I think there's just stuff like that that has in some way deteriorated trust. But I truly believe, like looking around, Ash, there's not a tradie or builder out there that doesn't want to be a good builder or tradie or leader. I tell you, there is not one out there. It's just that some might not have the skills of leadership and things like that.
I love that, and I remember when I was building my house, which I've now been in for 9 months, being quite frustrated because we had a very long build and there was lots of things that went wrong. But the thing that got to me the most was the lack of communication. And knowing that was a skill gap for that builder didn't help me get my house down quicker, but it did. It broke my trust with that builder because it's like, well, I can't rely on you. It's okay if things are going late, but if you don't tell me they're going late and I have to call you 3 times to find out, that's where you're breaking down your trust. And it's something I see in the workshop, like as a tradie, whether it's construction, plumbing, transport, mechanical work. The inability to have those hard conversations is hurting us almost more than any other skill gap in the industry. That's what I see and what I've observed and experienced.
You're completely right, Ash. And I tell you what, it's also between the builders and the tradies. Hey, I saw that too. I'd started building company and we started it over COVID. It was going quite successful, but like we were getting 2.7 star reviews because of our communication. We would build a beautiful product and it would be like, come on, like walk into that home and tell me it's not beautiful. But it wasn't about that. It was the experience. But I think the other thing that I wanted to say, Ash, was when I was doing that company and being true to your audience and everything, and I've worked in lots of construction companies, but my background's white collar. So I was Kmart's marketing manager. That was my first job, like my first proper job. I was Kmart's marketing manager in retail, selling men's undies. But I brought all this business knowledge, and then I went to GJ Gardner, and I walked in there and I was like, wow, this is really interesting because what we do over there just every day is logical stuff we don't do over here, but we could never do what these guys do. Anyway, as that journey sort of progressed and I went on to Avondale Homes, and one thing I noticed in terms of trust, builders and tradies too, sometimes there's this distrust between them. And and when I walked into Avondale, I was like, why? What is going on? And I think it all comes back to exactly what you said, communication between the two. So it's also like internal to your team, as well as external to the market, because they are your team in there and they might be your subbies, but like builders, treat your subbies like your team. You should treat them like you're the coach. You know, if anything, like rev them up, get them into the game, like let's go. That's how I'd run a building company if I ever did it again.
I love that you recognise the fact that those skills that we talk about them in terms of leadership, and they are essential for our leaders to be able to communicate, have difficult conversations, and there's a range of other leadership skills, but those same skills help teams work better together. So they're actually universal. Now, you obviously speak to a lot of different people on your podcast who are great or good examples of leaders and leadership within the construction industry. What would you say is the common mindset or the common skills they have that make them great from a leadership perspective?
People. They love people. They're all about people. They understand you've got to nurture people and support people and grow people. And they continually want to jump back on, and I'm sure a lot of them actually want to jump on your pod as well because they want to share their knowledge as well. That's probably what I see. I see people that are, they're sharing people. Number 2 is the best leaders, like a lot of people say that they are, it's all about the team, it's all about this, but they truly are, and I think that's where it's at. And it goes on from the conversation we just had, Ash, where it's not just the people within their direct building company, it is their subbies, it's their trades, it's the way they talk about them. And every time I talk to them, a question pops up, or they talk about what a good subby and builder relationship looks like because they understand it and they really focus on it. So I think that makes a good builder and also makes a good leader, really.
What does that relationship look like when relationships are prioritised and there is strong trust and leadership in between different stakeholders in the system?
I think it's creating a great environment and making it like a good vibe to work in, but a good vibe to a point where you're okay to have the difficult conversations. That's what these guys and girls are very good at. And that's when I've probably sat here, Ash, and when you talk to me about whether I'm a good leader, I'm like, I am nothing like you guys. Because you can see it in them. They're okay to have these difficult conversations, but they have them in a very professional manner, and they're very logical about it. But I think practice in real life is like you always talk about, and those difficult conversations and things is harder, but that's what I think it is. I think it's those things of, giving the respect to give them the leash, But then on the other side, when they're not performing or they're not doing things the way you want them to be done, or just they can do better, having the conversations, but providing the support. The stakeholder part's hard. I worked at GJ Gardner and we had a master franchise structure. And so GJ Gardner back in the day was set up with a corporate franchisor. So we were allegedly the leaders, but there were master franchisees in each state. So they were the leaders of each of their state. I guess where your podcast hit home and me wanting to learn was probably from my past experience there, because when you talk just then about stakeholders, I don't think we managed the leadership within the stakeholders very easily, and it was hard. It was very hard because they, even to the degree of having their own budgets for things they wanted to do in their states, we were never able to touch them, but we were having to negotiate for them. So leadership is a skill where you've got to influence and stuff like that too.
It's interesting that you talk about leadership. Like, we started the conversation probably a little bit more introspective, saying this is what it means to lead ourselves. This is like self-awareness and managing ourselves and taking responsibilities where we started. And you can see how that with leadership skill and practice, and even sometimes that leadership position, you have to go from leading by example and leading yourself as a foundation to actually understanding other people so that you can help get the best out of them, and to influence people who may not actually report to you or you might not have authority over. And it is a journey, and when I think about it, you never are only working on one part. You're always kind of shifting wherever you need to put your attention most. And sometimes it's on growing your influence. Sometimes it's on, actually, I need to take some time to work on some skills or some mindsets that aren't helping me or some bad habits I have. And it's not black and white, and it's very grey, because every person, every stakeholder, every situation, you need to take into account that nuance in that context.
That is a really good point, Ash, and that was one thing that maybe I was never going to bring up, but now you've brought it up, I'm going to. People are different. Being a leader to different people is really hard. So I think you've finished off what I was trying to say with GJ Gardner, and I love all the guys there, but we had 4 different master franchisees that were all leaders of their states that were very different. So you've got a business mogul and a builder chippy, and you've got a half businessman and a really great builder down in Victoria, and then you've got 2 builders in SA that are wanting to get their MBA and going on this. So they're all different characters, and you're like, how do I play the field? Like, how do you play this? And that's part of it. You're completely right. Like, you've got to be not only aware of yourself, I think you were saying, you've got to be aware of the situation, environment, and the people that you're talking to as well. And it's a tough skill. So yeah, this is a very cool chat, Ash. Like, I think interestingly, I'm supposed to be talking about leadership. I think I'm learning more about leadership as we go.
I'm looking at the time, I'm like, I feel like we could keep talking for hours.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to end the episode eventually. The final question I ask all the guests is, what would be your advice to other people in the industry and tradies, whether they're apprentices, whether they are chippies going to builders, or even people who are leading tradies in their businesses or teams? What advice would you give them about how they could lead better day to day?
Number 1, listen. I think have a conversation with the people. Like, take time and not just listen about, like, don't just judge them about how they're going on at work. I'm a bit of an emotional guy, Ash, but see how they're going, like, in life. Sit down with them and say, hey, get to know them. Have that personal rapport so you can break down a few barriers, and then they're going to be a bit more receptible to your feedback as well. And I think that's why the way I tried to manage, and maybe I let it go too far. And so I think there's a balance, but I think that's important. And I think a bit of empathy and things like that is something in the construction industry that we could do a bit better. Not trying to sound like a softie, but it's true. And I think that's where I've worked across some really interesting businesses, and it might be interesting for your tradies out there. I've been on the tools, don't get me wrong, but I've worked across Mirvac and some of those big guys. And what I've seen in those leadership roles as well, Ash, a lot of them have made a concerted effort to bring the right women into their businesses. Definitely what we found was there was a level of better employee and team satisfaction because they think in a more empathetic way beyond all the things we've talked about today, Ash. Just, as a good leader, listen and ask some questions of them and get them to talk back to you and build that rapport. And I think on that empathetic level, get to understand what's going on, because people can have bad days too, Ash. Like, as you know, you can go into work and you can be on and you can be off, but Sometimes it's not, you don't want to be off, but something could be happening in the background. And we've got enough of this mental health stuff going on in the industry. I think when it all comes back to communication and support, which you have talked about a lot on your podcast and we talked a bit about today, I think it all comes back to that. Communicate with them, support them. Communicate with them, support them, help them grow. You
have brought such a thoughtful perspective and insight into leadership, and I've really enjoyed everything you've shared, from your own self-reflection and your own journey and the transparency about still being a work in progress. So thank you for everything you've shared. As I love what you're doing with The Good Builder. I love having fellow optimists in the industry who are doing what we can to make the industry better, and I have no doubt that anyone listening to this will have learned a lot from your insight and what you've shared today.
Thank you so much, Ash. Yeah, same with you.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another industry insider diving into how they practice leadership in the trade sector. If this episode landed for you, tap like, subscribe to Tradies Who Lead, or follow us on socials for more stories from the voices you hear on the show.